It was a quiet morning. The sun was rising slowly, birds were singing, the streets were almost empty. A black BMW was moving smoothly through a rich neighborhood. Inside the car sat Michael Owens. He wore a gray suit, a blue tie, and shiny black shoes. His hands were on the steering wheel and his face looked calm. He was thinking about work, about the files he had to review, and about his usual cup of coffee. Suddenly, he heard a loud siren behind him. Wee-oo! Wee-oo! Michael looked in the mirror. A police car was following him. He pulled over quickly, kept his hands on the steering wheel, and waited. A young white officer walked up. His name tag said, Officer Taylor. He looked angry, even though Michael hadn't done anything wrong. License and registration, Taylor said coldly. Michael gave them without a word. What are you doing in this neighborhood? Taylor asked. Michael replied politely, Just heading to work. Is something wrong, officer? Taylor didn't like his calm voice. You people always act smart, he said under his breath. Michael stayed quiet. Another police car arrived. 2 more officers stepped out. They searched Michael's car. They found nothing. Still, Taylor gave him a ticket for reckless driving, even though Michael had done nothing wrong. Michael asked, Can I see the reason, please? Taylor snapped, You can argue in court, now move. Michael looked at him for a second. He nodded, took the paper, and drove away slowly. A week later, Courtroom Michael stood inside a small courtroom. It was old with dusty wooden benches and dull yellow lights. In front of him sat Judge Raymond, an old white man with a red face and sharp eyes. He was known for being tough on certain people, especially people like Michael. Judge Raymond looked at the paper. He didn't even look at Michael properly. Reckless driving, huh? He said loudly. You people never learn. Always breaking. Rules. Michael raised his hand gently. Your Honor, I was driving safely. The officer— Quiet! Judge Raymond shouted. Don't teach me the law! Michael's face stayed calm, but his eyes turned cold. Raymond smiled to himself. He liked showing power. I'm fining you $1,000. And next time, stay out of neighborhoods where you don't belong. The courtroom went silent. Michael looked at him for a long moment. Then he said in a soft voice, Understood, Your Honor. He turned around and walked out, holding the fine paper. Everyone in the room watched him. No one spoke. Outside the court, Michael stood under the gray sky, looking up. He didn't look angry. He looked focused. He took out his phone and called someone. Yeah, he said. It happened. The judge? His name is Raymond. A short pause. Michael nodded. No, I didn't argue. I let him talk. He doesn't know who I am. But he will soon. He ended the call. Back home, Michael entered his apartment. It was neat and simple. No one would guess who he really was by looking at the place. He opened his laptop and typed a few notes. Judge Raymond, fined without cause. Officer Taylor, unlawful stop pattern. Victims. He saved the file with the name Case R. He closed the laptop and leaned back in his chair. His eyes were sharp now. His calm face was gone. This wasn't about a fine, he whispered to himself. It's about justice. He stood up, looked at his own reflection in the mirror, and said, They think I'm just another man, but they chose the wrong target. The next morning, the city was busy again. Cars moved fast. People rushed to work. No one knew what had happened to Michael Owens in court. But Michael, he was already awake, already planning. He stood in front of his mirror, fixing his tie. His face was serious now. No smile, no fear. He picked up the fine paper from the table, folded it carefully, then put it in his jacket pocket. He whispered to himself, He will remember this fine. A tall building. Downtown Michael's black BMW stopped in front of a tall glass building. At the entrance, two security guards looked up and quickly stood straight. "Good morning, sir," one said. Michael nodded. "Morning." He walked through metal detectors. No one stopped him. He moved like he belonged there. Because he did, he took the elevator to the 14th floor. The doors opened. A big sign on the wall read, "Office of the District Attorney." Michael walked through the hallway. People greeted him with respect. "Morning, Mr. Owens." "Sir, your 9-0 is ready?" "Coffee, sir?" Michael smiled slightly. Later, he entered a large office. There was a nameplate on the door. Michael Owens, Deputy Chief Prosecutor. Yes, Deputy Chief Prosecutor. The same man who was treated like a criminal in court. Was one of the top legal minds in the city. Inside his office, Michael sat at his desk and opened his laptop. He pulled out the fine paper from his pocket and placed it next to his files. Then he typed, "Subject, Judge Raymond, unlawful behavior." He attached a copy of the fine and began writing, "Stopped without cause, spoken to with racial bias, no evidence of reckless driving, judged unfairly in court, heavy fine issued with personal insult." He paused, then added one final line, "This is not the first time he's done this. I will prove it." Flashback moment. Emotional beat. Michael opened a drawer. Inside was an old photo of his father. His father had been arrested years ago for a crime he didn't commit. Judge Raymond had sentenced him harshly, without evidence. His father died in prison. Michael looked at the photo. "I couldn't save you, Dad, but I'll stop him now." He closed the drawer. His eyes were sharp again. Next. "Steps begin," Michael called a staff member. "Get me every complaint ever made against Judge Raymond." The staff replied, "That's over 100 cases, sir," Michael said calmly. "Then bring me all of them." He called someone else. "Reach out to Internal Affairs. I want to check the records of Officer Taylor, too." The wind was cold. That morning, clouds covered the sun. The city was waking up slowly, but Michael Owens had already been working for hours. He wasn't fighting with fists. He was fighting with proof, with law, with truth, and most of all, with silence. Inside the prosecutor's office, Michael sat in his office. Around him were boxes filled with papers, complaints, old files, forgotten cases. Each one told a painful story. A man jailed without reason, a mother fined for crying in court, a teenager locked up for a broken tail light. Michael whispered, "All victims of Judge Raymond." He opened one file. Inside was a letter, written in shaky handwriting. "Please help me. The judge didn't even let me speak. I lost everything." It was from a 68-year-old man named Mr. Harold Green. His face was on the attached photo, eyes full of pain. Michael closed the file gently. "This war won't be loud," he said. "It'll be smart." Visiting Mr. Green, emotional scene later that day, Michael stood outside a small, broken-down house. He knocked on the door. An old man opened it, thin, weak, with tears already in his eyes. "Mr. Green?" Michael asked softly. "Yes. Who are you?" the man asked. Michael took a step forward and said, "Someone who believes you." They sat inside. The old man spoke slowly, his hands shaking. "He took my land, fined me, said I was lying. I begged him." He laughed. Michael listened carefully. No notebook, no questions, just silence and respect. At the end, Mr. Green looked at him and said, "No one ever cared before." Michael replied, "They will now." Back at the office, the plan. Michael pinned pictures and names on a big board. Mr. Green, a single mother named Keisha, a college boy named Luis, a taxi driver named Omar, all judged unfairly. All by Judge Raymond. Michael drew red lines. Between the names, He didn't just hurt people, he said. He targeted them. Undercover operation begins. Silent but strong. Michael called a trusted agent named Sarah. I need eyes in Raymond's courtroom, he said. Undercover? She asked. Yes, Michael replied. Sit in the back. Watch. Record everything. Don't let him see you. A few days later, Sarah reported back. He fined a woman $500 for being 5 minutes late, she said. And a young man? He told him, go back to your country. Michael looked down. Perfect, he said. Quiet. Before the storm at night, Michael stood by his window. The city lights blinked like stars, but his heart was heavy. He was fighting an enemy in the dark. A judge with power, friends, and a hidden history. But Michael had something stronger. Truth, he whispered. You think no one sees you, Raymond. But I see you now. The wind had changed. The city still moved like normal. Cars honking, people rushing, life going on. But behind the scenes, a silent storm was building, and Michael Owens was the man controlling it. Early morning, Michael's office. Michael sat at his desk. His board of victims now had more faces, more names, more pain. He had everything: proof, video clips, complaints, old news articles. He just needed one big move to start the fall of Judge Raymond. He looked at Sarah, the undercover agent. I need him to show his true face in court, he said. She nodded. He's close. His anger is boiling. He'll snap soon. Michael smiled slightly. Good. Let him. Courtroom. Hidden camera. Rolling a young woman named Jasmine stood in front of Judge Raymond. She was nervous. Just a parking ticket. She was 10 minutes late to court. I'm sorry, sir. My baby was sick. Judge Raymond slammed the desk. I don't care about your baby. Everyone in the courtroom went silent. I'll make it $750 now, Raymond shouted. You people never learn responsibility. Sarah, sitting quietly in the back, pressed a button on her watch. The hidden camera was recording everything. Back at Michael's office. Evidence builds. Later that night, Sarah showed Michael the video. He watched quietly. At the part where Raymond yelled, Michael paused, rewound, watched again. Then he looked up at Sarah. This is it. He added the video to a secret folder titled Operation Fall. The journalist enters. Michael picked up his phone and called someone. Meet me. Alone. The next day, the city woke up to a shock. It was all over the news, every channel, every headline. Racist judge under investigation. Victims speak out against Judge Raymond. Video shows judge yelling at mother with sick baby. People watched with wide eyes. Some were angry, some were crying, and some were finally hopeful, because someone was standing up. Newsroom, the fire starts. Karen Fields, the journalist Michael had trusted, spoke on live TV. She showed real stories, real victims, faces of people. Judge Raymond had hurt. A clip played of him yelling in court. She ended the report by saying, this man was supposed to give justice, but he used power to hurt the innocent. The people deserve answers. Phones started ringing. Protests began outside the courthouse. The city was no longer silent. Inside Raymond's office, pressure builds. Judge Raymond watched the news on his TV. His hands shook. His face turned red. He threw his cup at the wall. Who did this? He shouted. Who's behind it? His assistant rushed in. Sir, there's more. The mayor is asking questions. Internal affairs, too. Raymond's heart sank. For the first time, he felt fear. Real fear. Michael watches. Quietly in his office, Michael stood by the window looking out. His phone buzzed. A message from Karen. It's working. People are listening. Michael replied, it's only the beginning. He walked to his board. So many names, so many voices finally being heard. But one thing was still missing. A courtroom. A real trial. The victims speak out, one by one. The victims came forward. Mr. Green appeared on a talk show. He said with tears in his eyes, "I thought I'd die with no justice, but now I feel seen." Jasmine told her story on a podcast. Omar, the taxi driver, shared how his license was taken without cause. Their stories were different, but the pain was the same, and all of them pointed to one man, Judge Raymond. Raymond tries to fight back. Raymond went on TV, too. He spoke with fake confidence. "Have served this city for 30 years. I stand by my decisions." But the public didn't believe him anymore. They had seen the truth. He was no longer the judge in control. He was the man on trial in everyone's eyes. The day had come. The courtroom that once echoed with Judge Raymond's voice was full of whispers now, but this time, Raymond wasn't behind the bench. He was standing in front of it. The man who once judged others was now being judged. Crowd outside the court. A large crowd stood outside the building. People held signs. "Justice for the innocent." No one is above the law. We remember the pain. News reporters were everywhere. Cameras flashed. Live streams ran non-stop. The world was watching. Inside the courtroom, Michael Owens entered, dressed in a black suit, calm, focused. No anger on his face, only purpose. He walked to the front and stood tall. Everyone looked at him. The same man who was once wrongly fined was now leading the legal case against the judge who did it. Michael looked at Raymond. Raymond looked older now. His eyes full of fear, his voice weak. He muttered, "You set all this up." Michael answered clearly, "No, Raymond, you set this up the day you chose hate over fairness." Michael's opening words. Michael spoke to the courtroom. "Ladies and gentlemen, today is not just about a man in a robe. Today is about every voice he tried to silence, every person he humiliated, every victim he thought would stay quiet." He pointed to the victims sitting in the front row. "Today, we speak for them." Witnesses. Speak one by one. The victims took the stand. Jasmine, voice trembling. "He laughed at me when I cried. I had no money. He didn't care." Mr. Green. "I begged him to listen. He didn't even look at me." A young man named Luis. "He told me to go back to my country. I was born here." Tears filled the room. Even some jurors wiped their eyes. Raymond sat frozen. He had no words, no defense. Raymond tries to speak. When it was his turn, Raymond stood up slowly. I was just doing my job. I didn't mean harm." Michael interrupted. "Judging fairly is your job. Ruining lives isn't." The room went quiet. Michael stepped closer. "You judged my skin, not my actions. You saw color, not character." He paused. "But today, I stand here, not as a victim, but as justice." Closing words. The turning point, Michael's final words, shook the room. "You wore the robe of justice, but you used it for power. That robe doesn't protect you anymore." He looked at the judge now leading the case. "I rest my case." Final scene. Awaiting the verdict, the jury left the room to decide. Michael stepped outside. The crowd cheered, but he didn't smile. He stood under the gray sky, quiet, still. A little girl from the crowd ran up to him and said, "You're my hero." Michael looked down, knelt, and said softly, "No, sweetheart. Justice is the hero. I just brought it home." The courtroom was silent. Even the air felt heavy. 12 jurors walked back in, faces serious, hands holding the final paper. Judge Raymond sat still. His heart pounded. Sweat on his forehead, Michael Owens stood calm, strong, ready. This was the moment. The jury speaks. The lead juror stood up and read the words slowly. "We, the jury, find Judge Raymond guilty. The entire room froze for a second. Then came gasps, tears, applause. Some people cried softly, some just sat in shock, relieved. Justice had finally spoken. Raymond's fall. Raymond stood up, but his legs were weak. His eyes searched the room. No respect, no power, no robe, just shame. The bailiff stepped forward. "Sir, you're under arrest for abuse of power, racial discrimination, and judicial misconduct." He placed cuffs on Raymond's wrists. As Raymond was walked away, he turned to Michael. "You destroyed me." Michael looked at him and said only one thing. "No, you destroyed yourself." Outside the court, the city breathes news reporters shouted, "Justice served! The racist judge is finally gone! Michael Owens leads the fight for change." Michael walked down the courthouse steps slowly, not smiling, not celebrating, just peaceful. He had done what he promised. Not for fame, but for every voice that was ignored.